She pulled her leg back and kicked an 8-year-old cancer patient square in the ribs. A grown woman, designer heels, first class. She kicked a dying child so hard his oxygen tube ripped off his face and his body crumpled to the cabin floor like a broken toy. His mother caught him screaming. Blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. And the flight crew? They walked past that little boy bleeding on the floor and handed his attacker a glass of water. Nobody helped him. Nobody stopped her. But here's what that woman didn't know. That little black boy she just kicked, his father owned the entire airline, and he was 60 minutes away from destroying every career on that plane. Subscribe now, follow this story to the very end, and comment your city so I can see how far justice travels tonight. Tanya Thompson had not slept in 4 days. 4 days. 96 hours of hospital fluorescent lights, of doctors speaking in low voices outside her son's room, of watching monitors beep and dip and beep again. Her boy, Malik, 8 years old, 62 pounds, had been fighting late-stage leukemia for 11 months. 11 months of chemotherapy that burned through his veins. 11 months of watching her child lose his hair, lose his appetite, lose the strength to walk across a room. And now they had one chance left. One. A specialist at Seattle Children's Hospital had reviewed Malik's case and agreed to see him, but only if they could get there by Tuesday morning. It was Sunday night. Tanya booked 2 first-class tickets on Atlas National Flight 714, Atlanta to Seattle. She didn't book first class because she wanted luxury. She booked it because Malik needed space to lie down. He needed quiet. He needed to keep his portable oxygen unit close. She booked it because her son was dying, and she was trying to keep him alive long enough to reach a doctor who might save him. David, her husband, was supposed to fly with them. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But there was an emergency board meeting Monday morning that could not be moved. He kissed Malik's forehead at the airport drop-off and said, "I'll be right behind you, little man. Daddy's catching the next flight." Malik smiled. It was a small smile, weak, but it was real, and David held that image in his chest like a photograph he could not afford to lose. Tanya carried Malik through the terminal herself. He was too weak for a wheelchair to feel safe, so she held him against her hip, like she did when he was 2. People stared. She didn't care. A gate agent offered to help. Tanya thanked her, but said, "I've got him. I always have him." They boarded early, pre-boarding for passengers needing extra assistance. Tanya settled Malik into seat 3A by the window. She reclined his seat, tucked a blanket around him, adjusted his oxygen tube beneath his nose, and whispered, "We're almost there, baby. Just a few more hours." Malik looked up at her with glassy eyes. "Mama, am I going to be okay?" Tanya's throat locked. She swallowed hard and forced herself to smile. "You're going to be so okay. You're going to be the okayest kid in Seattle." He laughed, a tiny laugh. It cost him energy he didn't have, but he gave it to her anyway because that's who Malik was. Even at 8, even dying, he still tried to make his mother feel better. The cabin filled slowly. Business travelers with laptops already open, a couple heading to a wedding, an older woman with a crossword puzzle and reading glasses. And then she walked in. Lauren Whitmore, seat 2C, across the aisle, 1 row ahead. She boarded like the aircraft was built for her. Designer carry-on, heels clicking against the cabin floor, sunglasses still on even though it was 9:30 at night. She didn't greet the flight attendant. She didn't nod at anyone. She sat down, pulled out her phone, and immediately pressed the call button. "Excuse me, I ordered a sparkling water with lime before boarding. Where is it?" The lead flight attendant, a man named Greg Hollister, 15 years with the airline, rushed over like she'd reported a fire. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me get that for you right away." Lauren didn't say thank you. She adjusted her seat. She put in her earbuds. She made it very clear through every movement of her body that the space around her was hers, and silence was the rent everyone else had to pay. For the first 40 minutes, everything was fine. Malik slept. Tanya sat beside him, one hand resting on his chest to feel him breathe. The plane climbed to cruising altitude. The cabin lights dimmed. Tanya finally closed her eyes. And then Malik's pain hit. It came the way it always did, without warning. A wave of deep, bone-level agony that radiated through his abdomen and up into his ribs. His body curled inward, his face twisted. A sound came from his mouth that no child should ever have to make. It wasn't a scream. It was worse. It was the moan of a body too tired to scream, but too tortured to stay silent. Tanya was on him instantly. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here. Breathe with me. Breathe with Mama." She pressed the call button. She needed help adjusting his oxygen. She needed a pillow to support his side. She needed someone, anyone, to tell her she wasn't losing him at 37,000 feet. No one came for 2 minutes. Malik cried again, louder this time. His small voice broke through the hum of the engines, through the quiet conversations, through the cabin's careful illusion of peace. Lauren Whitmore pulled out her earbuds. She turned around in her seat and looked directly at Tanya. "Can you control your child?" Tanya didn't even look at her. She was too focused on Malik. "He's sick. He's in pain. Then maybe he shouldn't be flying." Tanya's hands didn't stop moving. She adjusted the tube. She wiped his tears. She whispered to him. But something inside her chest tightened. Something old. Something she recognized from every store, every restaurant, every waiting room where someone looked at her son and decided he didn't belong. "He has every right to be here," Tanya said quietly. Lauren scoffed. Actually scoffed. "I paid $4,000 for this seat. I expect a certain level of comfort. And I'm trying to keep my son alive, so please turn around." That should have been the end of it. In any decent world, that would have been the end of it. A mother asks you to leave her alone while she tends to her dying child, and you turn around. You put your earbuds back in. You count your blessings that your body works, that your lungs feel easy, that you've never had to hold your child and wonder if tonight is the last night. But Lauren Whitmore was not built for empathy. She was built for control. 10 minutes passed. Malik's pain flared again. This time, it was sharper. His cry was higher. His body jerked against the seatbelt. Tanya called out, "I need a flight attendant, please." Greg Hollister walked over slowly. Not with urgency. Slowly. Like a man heading to a task he didn't want. "Ma'am, is there a problem?" "My son is in severe pain. He has leukemia. I need help repositioning him, and I need to know if there's any medical equipment on board beyond the standard kit." Greg looked at Malik. Then he looked at Lauren, who was glaring from her seat. Then he looked back at Tanya. "I'll see what I can do." He walked away. He did not come back for 6 minutes. During those 6 minutes, Malik vomited. Tanya caught it in a blanket. She held his head. She told him she loved him. She told him Seattle was close. She told him everything was going to be okay, even though her hands were shaking and her vision was blurring, and she wasn't sure of anything at all, except that she would die before she let her son die alone on an airplane. Lauren pressed her call button. A different flight attendant, Jessica Reed, 24 years old, 6 months on the job, came to her row. "Yes, ma'am?" "I want to file a formal complaint. That child has been disruptive since takeoff. I want him and his mother moved to economy. This is unacceptable." Jessica looked at Lauren. Then she looked at Malik, who was pale and trembling under a vomit-stained blanket, oxygen tube barely clinging to his face. "Ma'am, the child appears to be medically ill. I don't think moving him is appropriate." "I didn't ask what you think. I asked you to do your job." Jessica hesitated. She looked toward the galley where Greg was standing, doing nothing. She looked at the cockpit door. She looked back at Lauren. "I'll speak to my lead." She walked to Greg. "That boy needs medical attention, and the woman in 2C is escalating." Greg shrugged. "The mom says it's leukemia. There's nothing we can do at altitude. Just keep the peace." "Keep the peace? Greg, he's a child. He's clearly in crisis." "And she's a Diamond Elite passenger. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." Jessica felt something crack inside her. Not break, crack. The kind of crack that lets light in or lets everything fall apart, depending on what you do next. She went back to check on Malik on her own. Tanya was rocking him gently, singing something soft and low. Malik's breathing had steadied, but his color was wrong. His lips had a blue tint. His eyes kept fluttering shut. "Ma'am, can I bring you anything? Water? A cold cloth?" Tanya looked up at Jessica. "Thank you. A cold cloth would help. And if there's any way to contact the ground, my husband he can arrange medical support when we land. I'll do everything I can." Jessica brought the cloth. She brought water. She brought a spare pillow from the crew rest area. She did these things quietly, quickly, and against the unspoken instruction from Greg to leave it alone. 20 minutes passed. Malik's pain subsided into a low, steady ache. He whispered to his mother, "Mama, the lady is mean." "I know, baby. Why is she so mad at me?" Tanya's heart broke into pieces she would never find again. "She's not mad at you. Some people are just angry at the world, and they take it out on whoever's closest. But I didn't do anything." "No, baby, you didn't. You never did anything wrong." Malik closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. Tanya thought he might finally rest. And that's when Lauren stood up. She didn't say a word. She pushed her blanket aside. She stepped into the aisle. She turned toward row 3, and she looked down at Malik like he was something on her shoe. "I've had enough." Tanya looked up. "Excuse me? This entire flight, your child has ruined my experience. Crying, moaning, vomiting. This isn't a hospital. This is first class. My son has cancer. Please sit down. I don't care what he has. He doesn't belong here." The words hit Tanya like a truck. He doesn't belong here. 4 words that carried the weight of every ugly thing this country has ever told Black mothers about their children. Tanya stood up. She put herself between Lauren and Malik. "You need to go back to your seat. Now." "Or what?" And then it happened. Lauren Whitmore stepped forward and kicked. She drove her foot into the side of the seat where Malik was lying. The impact hit his midsection. His body jerked violently. The oxygen tube tore from his face. The portable unit skidded across the floor. Malik's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes went wide. His hands grabbed at nothing. And then he crumpled, sliding off the seat onto the cabin floor like a rag doll. Tanya screamed. Not a word, a sound. The sound a mother makes when something breaks inside her that will never heal. She dropped to the floor beside her son. "Malik, Malik, look at me. Baby, look at Mama." His eyes were half closed. His breathing was shallow and wrong. His small chest rose and fell in stuttered rhythm. He looked up at his mother and whispered, "It hurts, Mama. It hurts everywhere." Lauren stepped back. She smoothed her blazer. She looked around the cabin as if waiting for someone to agree with her, as if what she'd just done was reasonable, as if kicking a dying child was simply the natural consequence of being inconvenienced. No one in that cabin moved. Not for 3 seconds, not for 5, not for 10. A man in row 4 put his hand over his mouth. A woman across the aisle started crying. A teenager in row 6 held up his phone and hit record. Greg Hollister came out of the galley. He looked at Malik on the floor. He looked at Lauren standing in the aisle. And you know what he did? He walked to Lauren first. "Ma'am, are you all right? Can I get you anything?" Tanya heard those words from the floor, holding her gasping son, and something inside her that had been patient for 36 years turned to iron. "Are you serious?" she said. "Are you asking her if she's all right? She just kicked my son, my 8-year-old son. He's on the floor, he can't breathe, and you're asking her if she's all right?" Greg stammered. "Ma'am, I need to assess the situation." "The situation is my son was assaulted. Call the captain, call the ground, call someone." A voice came from row 5. It was Doris Hale. 71 years old, retired emergency room nurse, 38 years at Grady Memorial in Atlanta. She had seen everything. Gunshots, car wrecks, children pulled from fires. She had never frozen in her life, and she wasn't about to start now. "Move," she said to Greg. Not "please move," not "excuse me." Move. She knelt beside Malik. Her hands moved with the kind of speed that only decades of crisis training can produce. She checked his pulse. She lifted his shirt and pressed gently on his abdomen. His body flinched. She felt the rigidity beneath her fingers, and her face changed. "His abdomen is rigid. There may be internal trauma. You need to divert this plane. Now." Greg stared at her. Ma'am, I can't make that decision. Then get me someone who can. This child could be bleeding internally. Every minute matters. Greg walked to the cockpit. He knocked. The door opened. He spoke to the captain for 90 seconds. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're aware of a disturbance in the forward cabin. The situation is under control. We will not be diverting. Estimated arrival in Seattle is approximately 3 hours and 40 minutes. A disturbance. That's what the captain called it. A grown woman kicks a child with cancer off his seat, rips away his oxygen, and the man flying the plane calls it a disturbance. Doris looked at Tanya. Do you have a phone? Call someone on the ground. We need medical waiting at the gate. Tanya's hands were shaking so badly she almost couldn't hold her phone. She dialed David. It rang twice. Hey, baby, you guys land safe? David. Her voice cracked wide open. David, a woman kicked Malik. Silence. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of a man whose entire world just shifted on its axis. What did you say? A woman in first class kicked our son. He's on the floor. His oxygen came off. David, his stomach is rigid. A nurse on the plane thinks there might be internal damage. The captain won't divert. Nobody's helping us. David, I'm scared. David Thompson sat in his office on the 42nd floor of Meridian Holdings headquarters in downtown Atlanta. On his desk were quarterly reports, merger documents, strategic forecasts for the next fiscal year. He was the CEO of one of the largest transportation conglomerates in the southeastern United States. Meridian Holdings owned Atlas National Airlines, 3 regional carriers, a logistics network, and a fleet of charter aircraft. He had built this company from a single regional route into a national operation. He had fought for every contract, every gate, every dollar. He had been underestimated his entire career, a black man building an airline empire in the American South. He had heard every version of, "You don't belong here," that existed. He had turned each one into fuel. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. Right now, he was a father, and his son was hurt, and his wife was afraid, and his boy was gasping for air on the floor of a plane that had his name on the ownership documents. Tanya, listen to me. Stay with Malik. Do not leave his side. I am handling this. He hung up. He sat still for 4 seconds. Then he picked up his desk phone and dialed his chief of operations. Jim, pull the live cabin feed for Atlas National Flight 714 right now. I want it on my screen in 60 seconds. David, it's 10 o'clock at night. What's going on? My son was just assaulted on one of our planes and the crew is doing nothing. 60 seconds, Jim. The footage was on his screen in 43 seconds. David watched. He watched the woman stand up. He watched her approach the seat. He watched her kick. He watched his son's body fold. He watched the oxygen tube rip away. He watched his wife fall to the floor. He watched the lead attendant walk to the attacker first. He watched 93 seconds pass before anyone knelt beside his child. 93 seconds. He would remember that number for the rest of his life. He picked up his phone and made 6 calls in 6 minutes. Call 1 to the head of corporate security. I want police at the Seattle gate when that plane lands. Federal assault charges. Have documentation ready. Call 2 to the airline's chief legal officer. File an incident report with the FAA immediately. I want this woman's name, her booking information, and her entire travel history with our airline. Call 3 to his executive assistant. Charter a Gulfstream from Peachtree DeKalb to Seattle Tacoma. I need to be in the air in 45 minutes. Call 4 to the head of human resources. The entire crew of Flight 714 is grounded the moment that plane touches down. No one goes home, no one clocks out. They stay until I get there. Call 5 to the chief medical officer at Seattle Children's Hospital. My son is arriving on Atlas National 714. He's been assaulted. He has late-stage leukemia and possible abdominal trauma. I need a team waiting at the airport. Call 6 to his wife. Tanya, I'm coming. Hold on to our boy. I will be there. David Thompson stood up from his desk. He He straightened his tie, he put on his coat, and he walked out of that building with the calm of a man who had already decided exactly what was going to happen next. Every person who failed his son tonight was going to answer for it. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. The Gulfstream lifted off from Peachtree DeKalb Airport at 10:47 p.m. Eastern. Flight time to Seattle, 4 hours and 38 minutes. David sat alone in the cabin with his laptop open, watching the recorded footage on a loop, frame by frame, second by second. He noted every moment of hesitation, every failure to act, every choice that prioritized comfort over a child's life. He opened a new document and began writing. Not a memo, not a press statement, a list. Names, timestamps, actions taken, actions not taken. At the top of the page, he typed one sentence. 93 seconds. Somewhere over the Rockies, David Thompson closed his laptop, leaned back in his seat, and stared into the darkness outside the window. His phone buzzed. A text from Tanya. A photo. Malik, still on the cabin floor, wrapped in a blanket, eyes barely open, but one hand raised in a tiny thumbs up. David stared at that photo for a long time. Then he whispered to the empty cabin, "Daddy's coming, little man." And the Gulfstream cut through the night sky like a blade. Back on Flight 714, Tanya had not moved from the floor. She sat with her legs folded beneath her, Malik's head resting in her lap, her fingers stroking his forehead in a slow, steady rhythm that was the only thing keeping her from coming apart. His breathing had stabilized, but it was shallow. Too shallow. Every inhale sounded like it cost him something he couldn't afford to give. Doris Hale stayed close. The retired nurse had repositioned herself in the empty seat directly behind Tanya and kept 2 fingers pressed lightly against Malik's wrist, monitoring his pulse every few minutes. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her presence was a wall between that child and everything else. 11:41 p.m. Eastern, 2 hours and 59 minutes to landing. Lauren Whitmore had returned to her seat. She sat with her arms crossed, legs crossed, jaw tight. She hadn't spoken since the kick. But she wasn't sorry. Tanya could see it. Every passenger within 3 rows could see it. Lauren sat in that seat like a woman waiting for someone to apologize to her. A man in row 4, Marcus Bell, mid-50s, retired military, leaned across the aisle toward his wife and said loud enough for Lauren to hear, "If that was my child, they'd have to land this plane for a different reason." Lauren turned her head slightly but said nothing. His wife, Sandra, grabbed his arm. "Don't. Not here. Not now." Marcus clenched his jaw and looked away, but his hands were fists in his lap. He hadn't unclenched them since the moment that boy hit the floor. In the back of the cabin, Jessica Reed stood in the galley, gripping the counter with both hands. She had watched everything. She had seen Greg walk to Lauren first. She had seen the captain dismiss a child's assault as a disturbance. She had seen the system she worked for choose a frequent flyer over a dying boy. And she was shaking. Not from fear, from fury she couldn't release. She pulled out her personal phone, she opened her notes app, and started typing. Time, 11:17 p.m. Female passenger, seat 2C. Kicked minor in seat 3A. Child is medically fragile, visibly ill, oxygen dependent. Lead attendant Hollister responded to attacker first, did not check on child. Captain refused diversion request from passenger with medical background. No onboard medical assessment initiated by crew. She typed it all, every detail, every timestamp, every failure. She didn't know why yet. She just knew someone needed to write it down before it got rewritten. Greg Hollister walked into the galley. He saw her phone out. "What are you doing?" Jessica slipped it into her apron. "Nothing." "Don't make this into something, Reed. The kid is fine. The mom is dramatic. And that woman up there is a Diamond Elite member with over 400,000 miles on this airline. You understand what I'm saying?" Jessica looked at him, really looked at him. "Greg, that child might have internal bleeding." The nurse said might. That's not a diagnosis. That's a guess. She's a retired ER nurse with almost 40 years of experience. She's a passenger who's overstepping. Our job is to keep the cabin calm and get to Seattle. That's it. Our job is to keep people safe, Greg. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. Your job, Reed, is whatever I tell you it is. You've been with this airline 6 months. I've been here 15 years. Do you want to be here for 16? Then put your phone away and go offer seat 2C another drink. Jessica didn't move. That's an order. She walked out of the galley, but she didn't go to seat 2C. She went to Tanya. Ma'am, how is he doing? Tanya looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. His pulse is steady, but his stomach is still hard. The nurse says we need to watch for changes. Jessica knelt down. I called ahead to the gate. Paramedics will be waiting when we land. Tanya grabbed her hand. Thank you. You're the only one who's helped us. Jessica squeezed back. I'm sorry it's not more. 12:03 a.m. Eastern, 2 hours and 37 minutes to landing. Malik opened his eyes. He looked up at his mother and whispered, Mama, are we still flying? Yes, baby, we're still flying. Is the mean lady still here? Tanya didn't answer right away. She brushed his hair back. Don't worry about her. Close your eyes. She said I don't belong here. His voice cracked on the last word. Not from pain, from something worse. From the first time in his 8 years of life that someone told him he was less than. Mama, why did she say that? Tanya's chest collapsed. She had prepared for so many conversations. She had prepared to tell her son about his diagnosis. She had prepared to explain why his hair fell out, why his friends stopped coming over, why he couldn't play basketball anymore. She had prepared for the possibility of telling him goodbye, but she had never prepared for this. She had never prepared to explain to her dying child why a stranger hated him enough to hurt him. Malik, listen to me. You belong everywhere. You hear me? Everywhere. That woman is wrong. She is broken inside in a way that has nothing to do with you. Then why did she kick me? Because she's small, baby, not in her body, in her heart. And small people try to make everyone else feel small too. But you're not small. You're the biggest person on this whole plane. Malik closed his eyes again. I want Daddy. Daddy's coming, I promise. 12:22 a.m., 2 hours and 18 minutes to landing. In the middle of the cabin, something shifted. It started with the teenager in row 6. His name was Jalen Carter, 17, heading to Seattle for a college campus visit. He had been recording since the kick, 17 minutes of footage on his phone. He had captured everything. The kick, the scream, the crew's response, Lauren sitting back down like she'd just returned from the restroom, Greg offering her water, the captain's announcement, all of it. His mother sat beside him. She had been crying silently since it happened. Now she leaned over and whispered, What are you going to do with that? The right thing. Baby, be careful. Mama, somebody kicked a little boy, and nobody did anything. If I don't keep this, who's going to believe it happened? She looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. Keep it. 3 other passengers had also recorded. A woman in row 8, a man in row 10, and an older gentleman in row 12 who had served on a civilian oversight board and recognized exactly what he was witnessing. A systemic failure. The cabin had become a courtroom without a judge. Every witness was awake. Every phone was charged. And the defendant in seat 2C had no idea she had already been tried. 12:41 a.m., 1 hour and 59 minutes to landing. Lauren pressed her call button again. Greg came. Of course he came. I want to file a formal complaint when we land. That woman threatened me. Which woman, ma'am? The mother. She stood up and got in my face. Greg nodded slowly. I'll make sure the appropriate paperwork is available at the gate. And I want to speak to a supervisor. This airline allowed a severely ill child to disrupt an entire first-class cabin. There should be policies against that. Greg paused. For 1/2 of 1 second, something flickered behind his eyes. Maybe conscience, maybe doubt. But it passed. I understand your frustration, ma'am. We'll address it. He walked away. He passed Tanya on the floor. He did not look down. He did not stop. He did not acknowledge the child at all. Doris watched him pass. She leaned forward and said quietly to Tanya, That man is going to wish he'd made a different choice tonight. What do you mean? I mean, I've been alive 71 years, sweetheart, and I've learned that the universe has a long memory. What he did tonight, what all of them did tonight, it's going to come back around. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it always does. 1:08 a.m. Eastern, 1 hour and 32 minutes to landing. Somewhere over Montana, David Thompson's phone rang. It was Jim, his chief of operations. David, I've pulled the full passenger manifest for 714. The woman in 2C is Lauren Whitmore. She's a management consultant based in Buckhead. Diamond Elite status. She's flown Atlas National 47 times in the last 2 years. I don't care if she's flown 1,000 times. What's the crew status? Lead attendant is Greg Hollister, 15 years, clean record. Captain is Ray Donovan, 12 years, one prior incident involving a delayed medical response in 2019. Second attendant is Jessica Reed, hired in June. What about the footage? I've reviewed the full sequence. David, I have to be straight with you. It's bad. It's really bad. Tell me. The woman approaches the child's seat at 11:17 p.m. She makes contact at 11:17 and 14 seconds. The child falls at 11:17 and 15 seconds. First crew response doesn't occur until 11:18 and 48 seconds, and it goes to the attacker, not the child. The first crew member to touch your son is the junior attendant, Reed, at 11:19 and 22 seconds. That's 2 minutes and 8 seconds after the assault before anyone from this airline's crew put a hand on your boy. David closed his eyes. 2 minutes and 8 seconds. His son lay on the floor of a plane for 2 minutes and 8 seconds before anyone wearing a company uniform helped him. Jim, I want every person on that crew in a room when I land. No exceptions. David, the union is going to push back. Let them. And the woman, Whitmore, she doesn't leave that airport. I want security and police at the gate. Federal assault charges. I want her in handcuffs before she reaches baggage claim. David, are you sure you want to handle this personally? We can have legal take the lead. Jim, she kicked my son who is fighting for his life, while he was lying in his seat with a tube in his nose, and my crew watched. This isn't a legal matter. This is personal, and I'm going to handle it personally. He hung up. 1:27 a.m., 1 hour and 13 minutes to landing. On the plane, Malik had fallen into a restless half-sleep. His body twitched every few minutes, small, involuntary spasms that made Tanya flinch each time. She kept one hand on his chest and the other pressed against his stomach, feeling for changes in the rigidity Doris had identified. "It's still hard," Tanya whispered. Doris checked his pulse again. Pulse is 94, elevated but stable. His color is a little better. But I won't lie to you, honey. I'm worried about that abdomen. What do you think happened? The impact could have caused a splenic contusion or aggravated something the leukemia had already weakened. His platelets are probably low, which means even minor trauma can cause internal issues. Tanya pressed her lips together. If something happens to my son because of what she did, I swear to God, nothing is going to happen. We're going to get him to the ground and into the hands of people who can help. You just keep doing what you're doing. Keep him calm. Keep him warm. Keep talking to him. He asked me why she kicked him. He asked me why she said he didn't belong. Doris was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "And what did you tell him?" "I told him he belongs everywhere." "Good, because he does." 1:53 a.m. Eastern, 47 minutes to landing. Lauren stood up to use the restroom. As she walked past row 4, Marcus Bell looked up at her. He didn't say a word. He just looked. But the look on his face carried the weight of every father, every grandfather, every man who had ever loved a child and could not comprehend what this woman had done. Lauren felt it. She stopped walking for half a second. Then she lifted her chin and kept going. When she came back, she stopped at Greg's station. "I assume the airline will be compensating me for this experience." Greg blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Compensation, a refund, an upgrade on my next flight, something. This has been the worst flying experience of my life." "I'll pass your request along, ma'am." "See that you do." She returned to her seat. She pulled out a compact mirror and checked her makeup. She adjusted her hair. She put her earbuds back in. Behind her, Jalen Carter watched and kept recording. 2:09 a.m., 31 minutes to landing. The captain came on the intercom. Folks, we've begun our initial descent into the Seattle-Tacoma area. We should be on the ground in approximately 30 minutes. Flight attendants, prepare for arrival. Tanya leaned down to Malik. 30 minutes, baby. 30 minutes and we're there. Malik's eyes opened. Will the doctors make it stop hurting? Yes, baby. They're going to take such good care of you. Mama, my stomach feels funny, like it's pushing. Tanya looked at Doris. Doris leaned in immediately, pressed gently on the left side of his abdomen. Malik winced hard. That's new, Doris said. The tenderness is spreading. We need to move fast when we land. Tanya, call your husband. Tell him we need a trauma team at the gate, not just paramedics. Tanya grabbed her phone. Her hands were trembling so badly it took her 3 tries to unlock it. David, the nurse says his abdomen is getting worse. She thinks we need a trauma team, not just paramedics. David was already on the phone with Seattle Children's. He switched lines instantly. Dr. Patel, I need a pediatric trauma team at the gate. Not the terminal, the gate. My son may have abdominal trauma, complicated by late-stage leukemia, with probable low platelet counts. He needs imaging the second he's off that plane. We'll have a team ready, Mr. Thompson. David switched back to Tanya. It's done. They'll be there. How's he talking? He's talking. He's awake. But he's hurting, David. He's hurting, and I can't make it stop. You're making it better just by being there. You're doing everything right. 25 minutes, Tanya. I'm landing right behind you. 2:23 a.m., 17 minutes to landing. The cabin felt different now. The air had changed. Every passenger in first class was awake. Every eye was either on Malik or on Lauren. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. It was the silence of people holding themselves back. The silence of witnesses who knew they were watching something that would stay with them forever. Jessica Reed walked through the cabin one final time. She made eye contact with Tanya and gave a small nod. Everything is ready. She made eye contact with Doris. The nurse held up one finger. One meaning watch him, meaning it could go either way. She passed Lauren's seat without stopping. She didn't trust herself to stop. In the galley, she pulled out her phone one last time and typed her final entry. 2:23 a.m., beginning descent. Child conscious but deteriorating. Abdomen increasingly tender. Lead attendant has not checked on child since initial incident. Captain has made no further acknowledgement. I have done everything within my authority. It is not enough. Someone with more power needs to see what happened on this flight tonight. She locked her phone and put it away. 2:34 a.m., 6 minutes to landing. The landing gear dropped. Malik flinched at the sound. Tanya held him tighter. That's just the wheels, baby. We're almost down. Mama, I'm scared. I know. I'm scared too. But being scared together is better than being scared alone. He reached up with one small hand and touched her face. Don't cry, Mama. She hadn't realized she was crying. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and forced a smile. Those aren't sad tears, baby. Those are almost there tears. The plane descended through low clouds. The cabin shuddered once, twice. Passengers gripped armrests. The engines changed pitch. 2:39 a.m. The wheels hit the runway. The plane lurched. Passengers swayed. Malik cried out as the impact sent a wave of pain through his midsection. We're down, baby, we're down. It's over. But it wasn't over, not even close. The plane taxied toward the gate. Through the window on the left side of the aircraft, passengers began to see something unusual. Red and blue lights, multiple vehicles, not one police car, 4. 2 ambulances, 3 black SUVs with corporate plates, and a cluster of people standing at the gate in suits, despite it being 2:30 in the morning on the West Coast. Marcus Bell looked out the window and said to his wife, "Something big is about to happen." Lauren looked out her window, too. She saw the lights. She saw the vehicles. And for the first time, something crossed her face that wasn't arrogance. It was doubt. The plane stopped. The seatbelt sign turned off with a chime that echoed through the silent cabin. Greg Hollister picked up the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats. We have a special arrival procedure this evening. Emergency medical personnel will be boarding first." The forward door opened. 2 paramedics stepped on with a stretcher. Behind them, a woman in a white coat with a stethoscope and a pediatric trauma bag. Behind her, 2 airport police officers. The first paramedic knelt beside Malik. "Hey, buddy, I'm Chris. I'm going to help you. Can you tell me where it hurts?" Malik pointed to his left side. "Here, and everywhere." Chris looked at Doris. "How long has the abdomen been rigid?" "Since approximately 11:20 p.m., over 3 hours. Tenderness has been spreading for the last 40 minutes. Vitals?" "Pulse has been between 88 and 96. Respiration's shallow but consistent. He's been conscious throughout." "You're a nurse?" "Retired. 38 years, Grady Memorial ER." Chris nodded once. "You probably saved this kid tonight." They lifted Malik onto the stretcher gently. Tanya stood up for the first time in over 3 hours. Her legs buckled. Jessica caught her arm. "I've got you." "Thank you," Tanya whispered. "Thank you for being human tonight." They carried Malik off the plane. Tanya followed, holding his hand, never letting go. Not even when the cold Seattle air hit them on the jet bridge. Not even when the flashing lights made her eyes sting. Not even when she saw the cluster of executives and security and realized that David had done what David always did. He had moved mountains, while she held the ground. Lauren stood up to gather her things. She reached for her carry-on. "Ma'am, remain seated." It was one of the airport police officers. Young, built, no expression on his face. "Excuse me? The flight is over. I'm getting off." "Ma'am, I need you to remain in your seat. You'll be escorted off separately." Lauren's eyes widened. "Escorted? Do you know who I am?" The officer didn't blink. "I know exactly who you are, ma'am. Please sit down." She sat. And through the window, pulling up to the tarmac in a black SUV that reflected the flashing lights like a mirror, David Thompson arrived. David stepped out of the SUV before it fully stopped. His shoes hit the wet tarmac, and he was already moving, already scanning, already looking for the stretcher. The Seattle air was cold and sharp, but he didn't feel it. He didn't feel anything except the pull in his chest, dragging him toward his son like gravity had been rerouted. 2:44 a.m. Pacific, 17 minutes since landing. He saw them. The stretcher was being loaded into the first ambulance. Tanya was beside it, her hand locked around Malik's fingers, her face swollen from hours of crying. A paramedic was adjusting an IV line. The woman in the white coat was speaking rapidly into a radio. And there, in the middle of all of it, was Malik. Small, still, eyes barely open. David ran. He didn't walk. A man worth $900 million ran across the tarmac like none of it mattered, because none of it did. "Malik!" The boy turned his head. His eyes found his father's face, and something shifted in them. Something that had been holding on by a thread finally let go. Not in surrender, in relief. "Daddy." David reached the stretcher and put his hand on his son's cheek. Malik's skin was cold. Too cold. David kept his palm there and leaned in close. "I'm here. Daddy's right here. You're safe now." "She kicked me, Daddy. She kicked me and it hurt so bad." I know she did. And I promise you, she's never going to hurt anyone ever again." Tanya grabbed David's arm. Her grip was desperate. "His abdomen is worse. The nurse on the plane said it could be his spleen. David, he's been in pain for over 3 hours and nobody helped us. Nobody except a retired nurse and 1 flight attendant." David looked at her. He saw 4 days of no sleep. He saw the terror of a mother who had held her child together with nothing but her bare hands and her voice. He saw a woman who had been failed by every system that was supposed to protect them. "I saw the footage," he said. "All of it. Then you know." "I know." He kissed Malik's forehead. He kissed Tanya's hand. Then he straightened up and turned to the paramedic. "Seattle Children's has a trauma team waiting?" "Yes, sir. Dr. Patel and a pediatric surgical team. We'll have him there in 12 minutes. Go. My wife rides with him. I'll follow." The ambulance doors closed. The siren kicked on. David watched it pull away, the red lights streaking across the wet pavement, carrying everything he loved in this world. He stood there for 3 seconds. Just 3. He let himself be a father for 3 more seconds. He let the fear and the rage and the love wash through him like a flood he couldn't stop, and didn't try to. Then he turned around. 2:49 a.m. Pacific. The father was gone. The CEO was here. His head of corporate security, a man named Victor Stokes, met him at the base of the jet bridge. Stokes was ex-FBI, 15 years at the Bureau before going private. He was calm the way a loaded weapon is calm. "Give me the status," David said. "Passenger in 2C has been detained on the aircraft, per your instructions. Airport police have her contained. We've got federal assault documentation ready. 2 officers are standing by to take her into custody the moment you give the word." And the crew? All 4 crew members are being held in the airline's operations room on the B concourse. Captain Donovan, Lead Attendant Hollister, Attendant Reed, and Attendant Marcos. Union rep has been called but hasn't arrived yet. "I don't need a union rep to tell me what I watched on that footage." "Understood. Who else is here?" "Your chief legal officer, Sandra Reeves, flew up on the charter behind you. She's in the ops room. Your head of HR, Patrick Coleman, is on video conference from Atlanta. Jim is still at headquarters monitoring the situation." David nodded. "I'm going on that plane first." Stokes hesitated for half a second. "David, legal would advise against direct contact with the suspect before charges are formalized. I'm not going on as a plaintiff, Victor. I'm going on as the owner of the airline she's sitting in. She assaulted a passenger on my aircraft. I have every right to be there." Stokes didn't argue. He'd worked for David for 7 years. He knew the difference between the conversations that were negotiations and the ones that were notifications. This was a notification. 2:53 a.m., David walked up the jet bridge. The aircraft was nearly empty. Most passengers had deplaned during the medical evacuation. A few remained, either by choice or because the police had asked them to wait as witnesses. Marcus Bell was still in row 4. His wife had gone ahead to the terminal, but Marcus stayed. He told the officer he wasn't leaving until he knew that boy was okay. Jalen Carter was still in row 6. His mother had begged him to come. He said no. He said he had something on his phone that mattered and he wasn't going anywhere until someone who could do something about it asked to see it. And in seat 2C, Lauren Whitmore sat with her arms crossed, flanked by 2 airport police officers, her face arranged in an expression she clearly believed conveyed authority, but which to everyone watching simply looked like a woman who had not yet realized how completely her world was about to collapse. David stepped through the forward door. He stopped at the front of the cabin. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood there. Lauren looked up at him. "Who are you?" "I'm David Thompson." "And that's supposed to mean something to me?" "It will." He took 1 step forward, then another. He stopped 3 feet from her seat. "I am the CEO of Meridian Holdings, the parent company of Atlas National Airlines. Every plane in this fleet has my signature on the ownership documents. Every route, every employee, every seat, including the one you're sitting in right now, exists because of decisions I've made." Lauren's expression shifted. Not to fear, not yet. To confusion, the kind of confusion that comes when the script in your head doesn't match what's happening in front of you. "I don't understand what that has to do with me." The boy you kicked tonight, the 8-year-old child with cancer that you walked up to and drove your foot into while he was lying in his seat with a tube in his nose. That boy is my son. The color drained from Lauren's face. It happened all at once, like someone pulled a plug. Her jaw slackened. Her hands dropped to her sides. Her eyes went wide and stayed wide. "That's not... I didn't know... You didn't know he was my son. That's what matters to you? You didn't know whose child he was? Let me ask you something, Ms. Whitmore. Would it have been acceptable if he was nobody's son? Would it have been fine if his father drove a bus instead of running a company? Would that kick have been justified then?" Lauren said nothing. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. "I watched the footage, every second of it. I watched you complain about a sick child. I watched you demand he be moved to economy. I watched you stand up, walk to his seat, and assault him with enough force to rip a medical device from his face. I watched my son hit the floor. I watched my wife scream. And I watched the crew of my own airline offer you a glass of water." His voice hadn't risen once. That was the thing that every witness in that cabin would remember later. He never yelled. He never lost control. His words came out steady and measured, and devastating in their precision. I have a question for you, Ms. Whitmore, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. When you looked at my son, what did you see? Lauren swallowed. I saw a child who was being disruptive. He has leukemia. I didn't know that. His mother told you. She told you directly. She said, my son has cancer. Please sit down. You kicked him anyway. I was frustrated. The flight was miserable. I hadn't slept. You hadn't slept? My wife hasn't slept in 4 days. My son hasn't slept without pain medication in 3 weeks. And you kicked him because you were frustrated? I'm sorry, okay? It was a mistake. A mistake is ordering the wrong drink. A mistake is missing an exit on the freeway. What you did was assault a minor, a medically fragile 8-year-old child, on an airplane, in front of witnesses, on camera. There is no version of this where sorry is sufficient. 3:01 a.m. Pacific, Marcus Bell stood up from row 4. Excuse me, sir. I don't know who you are, but I've been sitting here since this happened, and I need to tell you what I saw. David turned. What's your name? Marcus Bell, retired Army, 22 years. I was in row 4. I saw everything. That woman walked up to your boy, and she didn't hesitate. She kicked him like he was in her way, like he was nothing. And the crew, sir, the crew stood there and did nothing. That lead attendant walked right past your son on the floor and asked that woman if she needed anything. I wanted to get up. My wife held me back. But I should have gotten up. I'm sorry I didn't. David looked at him. You have nothing to apologize for, Mr. Bell. You're a witness, and your account matters. An officer will take your statement. I'll give them whatever they need. That boy deserves it. Jalen stood up next. Sir, I recorded it. All of it. From the moment she kicked him until right now. 17 minutes of footage. It's all on my phone. David looked at the teenager. What's your name, son? Jalen Carter. How old are you? 17. You did something tonight that grown adults in uniform didn't do. You documented the truth. Will you share that footage with our security team? Yes, sir. Thank you, Jalen. David turned back to Lauren. Ms. Whitmore, you're going to be taken into custody by airport police under federal assault charges. An investigation will determine the full extent of those charges. You are permanently banned from Atlas National Airlines and all Meridian Holdings carriers, effective immediately. Any legal representation you retain can contact our chief legal officer. Lauren's composure finally cracked all the way through. Her voice came out thin and shaky. You can't do this. I'm a Diamond Elite member. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this airline. David leaned in, just slightly, not aggressively, precisely. You spent money on tickets. You think that purchased you the right to kick a child? Diamond Elite, Platinum Premier. It doesn't matter what status you hold. No level of loyalty rewards gives you permission to assault a passenger on my aircraft, especially not a child, especially not my child. I want a lawyer. That's your right. Officers, she's yours. The 2 airport police officers stood Lauren up. One of them placed her wrists in handcuffs. The metallic click echoed through the empty cabin. This is outrageous, Lauren said, but her voice had lost all its power. She sounded like a woman who had just realized that every wall she'd built around herself was made of paper. They walked her down the aisle, past row 4, where Marcus stood watching, past row 6, where Jalen held his phone steady, still recording, past the galley, where Jessica Reed's notes were time-stamped and saved, past every row where passengers had sat in horror and helplessness and witnessed what unchecked entitlement looked like when it met a child who couldn't fight back. 3:09 a.m. Pacific. Lauren Whitmore was escorted off the aircraft and into a waiting police vehicle. The door closed, the lights flashed once, and the car pulled away. David watched it go. Then he took a breath and headed for the operations room. 3:14 AMB Concourse Airline Operations Room. The room was cold and bright. 4 crew members sat at a long table. Captain Ray Donovan at one end, arms folded, jaw set. Greg Hollister beside him, visibly nervous, picking at the skin around his thumbnail. Jessica Reed sat 2 chairs away from Greg, back straight, hands flat on the table. Attendant Marcos, who had been working the rear cabin and had the least involvement, sat at the far end, looking like he wanted to disappear. Sandra Reeves, David's chief legal officer, stood near the door with a tablet containing the footage, the flight logs, and Jessica's time-stamped notes, which had already been voluntarily submitted. David walked in. He didn't sit down. He stood at the head of the table and set a single printed photograph face down on the surface. My name is David Thompson. I am the CEO of Meridian Holdings and the owner of Atlas National Airlines. Earlier tonight on Flight 714, an 8-year-old passenger was physically assaulted by another passenger in the first-class cabin. The victim is currently being transported to Seattle Children's Hospital with suspected internal abdominal trauma. He paused. The victim is also my son. Greg Hollister's face went white. Captain Donovan's arms slowly uncrossed. Jessica closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. I have reviewed the complete cabin footage from the time of the assault through the remainder of the flight. I have reviewed cockpit communications. I have reviewed the in-flight incident log, which I note is remarkably sparse for an event of this magnitude. And I have reviewed a detailed personal account submitted voluntarily by one member of this crew. He turned the photograph over. It was a still from the cabin footage. Malik on the floor, Tanya on her knees. Greg Hollister, standing 3 feet away, facing Lauren Whitmore. This image was captured at 11:18 and 48 seconds p.m. Eastern Time, 93 seconds after the assault. This is the first response by any crew member, and it was directed not at the victim, not at the child on the floor. It was directed at the attacker. Mr. Hollister, would you like to explain this? Greg's mouth opened. He licked his lips. I was trying to assess the situation. I needed to understand what happened. You understood exactly what happened. You were in the galley 12 feet away. You heard the impact. You heard the scream. You saw the child on the floor. And you walked to the woman who kicked him and asked her if she was all right. It's standard procedure to address all parties in an incident. It is standard procedure to prioritize the victim, especially when the victim is a minor, especially when the victim is medically compromised. You did not check on that child for 2 minutes and 8 seconds. And when you finally did acknowledge his existence, it was only because another passenger, a retired nurse with no obligation to act, had already taken over emergency care. What were you doing for those 2 minutes, Mr. Hollister? Greg looked down at the table. I was managing the situation. You were managing the comfort of a Diamond Elite passenger, because that's what mattered to you. Not the child, not the blood, not the oxygen tube on the floor. The status of the person who did it. David turned to Captain Donovan. Captain, at approximately 11:22 p.m., a passenger with 38 years of emergency medical experience informed your crew that the child's abdomen was rigid and recommended an immediate diversion. You refused. You came on the intercom and called a violent assault on a minor a disturbance. Can you explain your reasoning? Donovan cleared his throat. Diversion protocols require a confirmed medical emergency as assessed by available medical personnel. The passenger who made the recommendation was not a licensed physician. She was a retired ER nurse with more trauma experience than everyone on this crew combined, and she told you the child could be bleeding internally. Your response was to dismiss it and continue to Seattle. We were 3 hours out from Seattle, and the nearest diversion would have been Billings. Medical facilities in Billings are limited. Limited facilities are better than no facilities, Captain. A child was assaulted. A medical professional told you he might be bleeding internally, and you decided your timetable was more important than his life. Donovan shifted in his seat. I made a judgment call. You made the wrong call. 3:26 a.m. David turned to Jessica Reed. His voice changed. Not softer exactly, but different. The blade went back in its sheath. Ms. Reed, I've read your notes. Every entry. Time-stamped, detailed, and accurate when cross-referenced with the cabin footage. You documented what your colleagues refused to acknowledge. You provided direct care to the child against the instructions of your lead. You called ahead for paramedics. You helped my wife stand when she couldn't stand on her own. Jessica's eyes glistened, but she held steady. I just did what I thought was right. You did what was right period. In a cabin full of people who chose silence or indifference, you chose to act. I want to understand one thing. Your lead told you to stand down, that he directly instructed you to leave the situation alone and attend to the passenger in 2C instead. Is that accurate? Jessica glanced at Greg. He was staring at the table. Yes, sir. He told me to offer Ms. Whitmore a drink and to stop making the situation bigger than it was. And what did you do? I ignored him. I went back to the child. Were you afraid of the consequences? Yes. But you did it anyway. That boy was 8 years old, Mr. Thompson. He was sick, and he was scared, and he was on the floor. I couldn't walk past him. I physically could not make my legs walk past that child. David nodded slowly. I have one more question for you, Ms. Reed, and I need an honest answer. In your 6 months with this airline, is this the first time you've seen crew members prioritize passenger status over passenger safety? Jessica hesitated. She looked at Sandra Reeves. She looked at Greg. She looked at the table. No, sir, it's not. The room went silent. The kind of silent that swallows sound and doesn't give it back. David turned to Greg Hollister. Mr. Hollister, effective immediately, your employment with Atlas National Airlines is terminated. You will surrender your crew credentials before leaving this room. You are terminated for gross negligence, failure to render aid to a minor in distress, and conduct unbecoming of a crew member of this airline. HR will process your paperwork. You will not fly for this company again. Greg's head snapped up. You can't fire me on the spot. I have union protection. I have 15 years of service. You have 15 years of service, and in 93 seconds, you erased every one of them. You walked past a bleeding child to comfort his attacker. You told a junior crew member to stop helping him. You prioritized a loyalty status over a human life. 15 years means nothing if this is who you are in the moment that matters. Greg opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I'll fight this. That's your right, but you won't fight it from inside this company. David turned to Captain Donovan. Captain Donovan, you are suspended immediately pending a full investigation by our Flight Operations Review Board and the FAA. Your license to operate Meridian Holdings aircraft is revoked until the investigation is complete. If the review determines that your refusal to divert contributed to medical harm, the suspension will become permanent. Donovan's jaw tightened. I was following protocol. You were following the version of protocol that protects the schedule, not the version that protects people. There's a difference, Captain. And tonight, your inability to see that difference may have cost a child his health. 3:31 a.m. Pacific. David picked up the photograph from the table. He held it for a moment. Malik on the floor, arms curled around himself, face twisted in pain. Every person at this table had a choice tonight. Some of you chose wrong. One of you chose right. He looked at Jessica. Ms. Reed, you're not being terminated. You're being reassigned. Starting Monday, you will report to the Corporate Safety Compliance Division at our Atlanta headquarters. Your role will be to help rebuild the crisis intervention protocols that failed tonight. Your salary will reflect the position. You earned this, not with years of service, with 6 minutes of courage. Jessica's composure broke. A single tear ran down her cheek and she wiped it fast. Thank you, sir. David set the photograph down in the center of the table. Take a good look, every one of you. This is what failure looks like. This is what happens when a system values comfort over compassion and status over safety. This image will be in every training manual this company produces from this point forward. Because my son is not a case study. He's a child, and he deserved better than what he got on this plane tonight. He straightened his tie, he buttoned his jacket, and he walked out of that room without looking back. 3:34 a.m. Pacific. David's phone buzzed as he stepped into the corridor. A text from Tanya. 2 words. He's stable. David leaned against the wall. He closed his eyes. He pressed the phone against his forehead and let out a breath he'd been holding since Atlanta. Then he pushed off the wall and started walking toward the exit. The car was waiting to take him to Seattle Children's. His son was alive. The woman who hurt him was in handcuffs. The man who ignored him was fired. The captain who dismissed him was suspended. And the young woman who chose courage over career had just been given one. But David knew something that none of them knew yet. What happened on Flight 714 was already spreading. 4 passengers had recorded footage. Jalen Carter's 17-minute video was sitting on a phone that belonged to a 17-year-old who grew up in the age of social media. The story wasn't going to stay in this airport. It wasn't going to stay in this city. By morning, the whole country would know what happened at 37,000 feet. And David Thompson was going to make sure they knew every single detail. 3:41 a.m. Pacific. David's car pulled up to the emergency entrance at Seattle Children's Hospital. He was out before the driver shifted into park. Through the glass doors, down a corridor that smelled like antiseptic and anxiety, past a nurse's station where someone recognized him and picked up a phone, and then left turn, second room, and there he was. Malik lay in a hospital bed that made him look even smaller than he was. Monitors beeped in steady rhythm. An IV dripped into the back of his hand. His eyes were closed. A thin blanket covered him up to his chest, and Tanya sat in a chair pulled so close to the bed that her forehead rested against the mattress rail. She wasn't sleeping. She was praying. Her lips moved without sound. David stood in the doorway. He didn't speak. He just looked at his son and felt the full weight of the last 5 hours pressed down on his chest like a stone. Tanya lifted her head. She saw him, and her face crumbled. David. He crossed the room and pulled her into him. She buried her face in his chest and shook. Not crying exactly, shaking. The kind of trembling that comes when a body has been holding itself together for too long and finally finds something strong enough to lean against. "What are they saying?" he asked. "They did an ultrasound and a CT scan. There's bruising on his spleen. The doctor called it a splenic contusion. They said if the kick had been an inch to the left, it could have ruptured. David, if it had ruptured, he could have bled out on that plane. With his platelet count, they said he wouldn't have been able to clot." David's hand stopped moving on her back. His entire body went rigid. She could have killed him. That's what the doctor said. She looked me in the eye and said if the impact had been slightly different, we would be having a very different conversation right now. David pulled back and looked at Tanya. "Who's the attending?" "Dr. Patel. She's been incredible. She's running more blood work now to check for any complications with his leukemia treatment. She said the bruising should heal, but they want to monitor him for 48 hours. Can he still see the specialist? Dr. Patel is coordinating with Dr. Morrison, the oncologist we came here for. He's agreed to come in tomorrow afternoon to evaluate Malik. She said the trauma doesn't disqualify him from treatment, but it complicates things." David sat down on the edge of the bed. He put his hand on Malik's arm, gently, barely touching. Malik stirred. His eyes fluttered open and focused slowly on his father's face. "Daddy, you came." "Of course I came. I told you I'd be right behind you. The doctors put a needle in my hand. It hurt, but I didn't cry. That's because you're the bravest kid I know." Mama cried, though. David smiled even though everything inside him was breaking. Mamas are allowed to cry. It's in the rules. Malik's eyes drifted. He was fighting sleep, fighting the medication, fighting to stay in this moment with both his parents beside him. "Daddy, what happened to the mean lady?" "She's gone, son. The police took her away." "Is she going to jail?" "She's going to face consequences for what she did." "Good." His eyes closed halfway. "Daddy, she said I shouldn't be on the plane. She said I don't belong." David leaned in close, so close his lips almost touched Malik's ear. "You belong everywhere, Malik. You hear me? Everywhere you go, you belong. That woman was wrong, and the whole world is going to know she was wrong." Malik's eyes closed all the way. His breathing deepened. The monitors beeped steady. He was asleep. David stayed exactly where he was for 2 full minutes. Then he stood up, kissed Tanya on the forehead, and said, "I need to make some calls. I'll be right outside." "David." "Yeah?" "Don't let them bury this. Don't let them turn it into a press release and move on." He looked at her. "They won't." 4:12 a.m. Pacific. David stood in the hospital corridor with his phone pressed to his ear. Sandra Reeves, his chief legal officer, was on the other end. Sandra, what's the status on Whitmore? She's been booked at the SeaTac Federal Holding Facility. Airport police processed her under 49 USC 46506, assault on a minor aboard an aircraft. It's a federal offense, carries up to 20 years. Has she lawyered up? Her attorney called the facility 40 minutes ago. Guy named Richard Carmichael, big firm out of Atlanta. He's already pushing for bail. Of course he is. David, Carmichael is going to argue it was a momentary lapse in judgment. No prior criminal history. She'll post bail by morning. Let her post bail. She can post bail on Mars for all I care. The charges are federal. They don't go away because she writes a check. There's something else. Carmichael has already contacted our legal department. He's threatening a defamation countersuit if the airline makes any public statements about the incident. David almost laughed. She kicked my son on camera in front of 20 witnesses, and her attorney is worried about defamation? It's a pressure tactic. He knows the footage exists. He's trying to get ahead of it. Sandra, 4 passengers recorded that assault. One of them is a 17-year-old kid with a smartphone and a sense of justice. That footage is going public with or without us. Carmichael can threaten whatever he wants. The truth is on video. So what's our play? We tell the truth, every bit of it. We don't spin it. We don't minimize it. We release a statement acknowledging the assault, confirming the termination of the lead attendant, confirming the suspension of the captain, and outlining the immediate policy changes we're implementing. We get ahead of this with honesty, not lawyers. David, the board is going to want to review this before we go public. The board works for me. Draft the statement. I'll approve it by 6 a.m. He hung up and immediately dialed Jim. Jim, I need you to pull the training records for every flight crew on the Atlantic corridor. I want to know when the last time any of them received crisis intervention training, medical emergency training, de-escalation training, all of it. David, it's 4 a.m, and my son is in a hospital bed because my airline failed him. I don't care what time it is. I'll have it by 7. Make it 6. 4:29 a.m. Pacific. David's phone buzzed with a notification, then another, then a cascade of them. He looked at the screen. Jim was calling again. David, we have a situation. What now? The footage is out. One of the passengers posted a clip on social media about 20 minutes ago. It's already been viewed 600,000 times. David closed his eyes. He'd known this was coming. He just didn't expect it at 4 a.m. Which clip? It appears to be the 17-year-old's footage. It shows the kick, the child falling, the mother screaming, and the lead attendant walking past the child to check on the attacker. It's 38 seconds long, and it's everywhere. Have we been identified? Not yet. The post says, quote, "A woman kicked a sick kid on my flight and the crew did nothing." No names. But David, it's only a matter of time. Someone will identify the airline. Someone will identify the boy. And when they find out who you are, this becomes a national story. It was always going to be a national story, Jim. A grown woman kicked a child with cancer on an airplane. The only question was whether we controlled the narrative or let someone else do it. What do you want me to do? Move up the statement. I want it out by 5 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Eastern, before the morning news cycle. And I want my name on it. Not corporate communications, not legal, my name. David, are you sure? Once you attach your name, there's no separating you from this. There was never any separation, Jim. That's my son. 4:41 a.m. David went back to Malik's room. Tanya was curled in the chair, finally asleep. Malik was still out, his small chest rising and falling in the blue glow of the monitors. David sat down in the only other chair and pulled out his phone. He opened the video Jim had referenced. He watched it. 38 seconds. The angle was from behind and to the right, row 6. He could see Lauren stand up. He could see her walk to the seat. He could see the kick. He could see Malik's body jerk and slide. He could see the oxygen tube fly. He could see Tanya fall to the floor. He could see Greg Hollister walk into frame, stop, and turn toward Lauren instead of the child. 38 seconds. 500,000 people had seen it. By morning, it would be 10 million. By tomorrow night, 50 million. David set his phone face down on his knee and stared at his sleeping son. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. "Mr. Thompson, this is Doris Hale, the nurse from the flight. I got your number from the paramedics. I just want to know how Malik is doing." David typed back, "Splenic contusion, no rupture, he's stable, 48-hour observation. Mrs. Hale, my family owes you a debt we can never repay. You don't owe me a thing. I did what anyone should have done. The difference is, nobody else did. That's exactly why I owe you. How are you holding up?" David stared at the message for a long time. Nobody had asked him that. Not Jim, not Sandra, not Victor. Everyone had asked what he wanted to do, what his plan was, what the next move was. Nobody had asked how he was. I watched the footage of my son being kicked while I was 30,000 feet away and couldn't do anything about it. I watched the people I pay to keep passengers safe ignore my child on the floor. I'm sitting in a hospital room right now, watching my 8-year-old sleep with a bruised spleen and a tube in his hand. How am I holding up? I'm not. I'm just moving forward because stopping isn't an option. Doris replied. That's called being a father, and from what I saw tonight, that boy has a good one. 5:02 a.m. Pacific, 8:02 a.m. Eastern. The statement went out. David's name was at the top. Atlas National Airlines official communication. He read it one final time on his phone before Sandra released it. On the night of Sunday, October 14th, an 8-year-old passenger with a serious medical condition was physically assaulted by another passenger aboard Atlas National Flight 714 from Atlanta to Seattle. The child, who was traveling with his mother for urgent medical treatment, was kicked while lying in his seat connected to supplemental oxygen. The assault resulted in the child being hospitalized with abdominal trauma. The assailant has been charged under federal law. After a thorough review of cabin footage and crew response, I have taken the following actions. The lead flight attendant has been terminated for failure to render aid and gross negligence. The captain has been suspended pending a full investigation into his refusal to divert the aircraft. A complete overhaul of our crisis intervention and medical emergency protocols is underway. I am the father of the child who was assaulted. I am also the CEO of Meridian Holdings, the parent company of Atlas National Airlines. I share both of these facts not for sympathy, but for accountability. The failures that occurred on this flight happened under my watch. The systems that failed my son are systems I built. That is a responsibility I take personally, and it is one I intend to fix publicly. Signed, David Thompson, CEO, Meridian Holdings. By 5:30 a.m. Pacific, the statement had been picked up by every major news outlet in the country. The 38-second video from Jalen Carter's phone was now attached to the story. The two together, the footage and the statement, created a tsunami. 5:47 a.m. David's phone rang. It was Patrick Coleman, head of HR from Atlanta. David, Greg Hollister's union has filed an emergency grievance. They're claiming wrongful termination and alleging you acted out of personal bias because the child was your son. Personal bias. A man ignored a child bleeding on the floor, and they're calling my response biased? They're going to argue that any other CEO would have followed standard HR protocol, conducted a 30-day review, and given Hollister due process. Any other CEO didn't watch his son get kicked on camera. But you know what, Patrick? Even if that boy wasn't mine, I would have done the same thing. Because I watched a crew member prioritize a frequent flyer program over a child's life. That's not a 30-day review. That's a termination. The union is pushing for reinstatement. They can push all they want. He's done. David, there's one more thing. Greg Hollister has given an interview. David's hand tightened around the phone. To whom? A local Atlanta station. It airs at 9 a.m. Eastern. He's claiming he was scapegoated and that the real failure was a lack of training, not personal negligence. He told Jessica Reed to stop helping my son. He told her directly to leave the child and go serve the attacker a drink. That's not a training gap. That's a character failure. I know, but the narrative is shifting, David. Hollister is positioning himself as the victim. Then we release the footage. David, not the assault footage, the crew footage. The internal cabin recording that shows Hollister walking past Malik, approaching Whitmore, and 6 minutes later, still not having checked on the child. We release it with timestamps. Let the public decide who the victim is. Legal needs to approve that. Sandra already has. Release it at 8 a.m. Eastern. Put it right next to his interview. 6:03 a.m. Pacific, 9:03 a.m. Eastern. David sat in Malik's room and watched Greg Hollister's interview on his phone. The man sat in his living room, in his Atlas National polo, looking directly into the camera.
I've dedicated 15 years to this airline. I've handled hundreds of incidents. I followed procedure that night. I assessed the situation the way I was trained to. And now I'm being fired because the CEO's son happened to be on my flight. If that boy had been anyone else's kid, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
David felt Tanya stir beside him. She was awake. She was watching too. He really said that, Tanya whispered. He really went on television and said that. He did. David, he watched our son on the floor. He stepped over him. And now he's on TV saying he followed procedure? It doesn't matter what he says, Tanya. The footage says everything. At 9:17 a.m. Eastern, Atlas National released the crew cabin footage. 14 minutes of unedited video, every second time-stamped. The internet watched Greg Hollister walk past an 8-year-old on the floor. They watched him approach Lauren Whitmore. They watched him offer her a beverage. They watched 6 minutes pass without a single check on the child. They watched Jessica Reed, the junior attendant, defy his orders and kneel beside Malik on her own. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Greg Hollister's interview became the most ratioed broadcast clip in the history of the network. His name trended for the wrong reasons. His LinkedIn profile was deactivated by noon. His attorney issued a statement walking back his client's comments by 1 p.m. By 2 p.m., the union quietly withdrew its grievance. 6:22 a.m. Pacific. Malik woke up. "Daddy, you're still here." "I'm not going anywhere." "My stomach hurts, Les." "That's because the doctors are taking care of you." "Daddy, am I famous?" David frowned. "What do you mean?" "A nurse came in earlier and she was crying. She said she saw me on TV. Am I on TV?" David looked at Tanya. She shook her head slightly. She hadn't told him. "Some people found out what happened to you on the plane, and they're very upset about it. Because what that lady did was wrong, and a lot of people want to make sure you're okay." "How many people?" David checked his phone. The video was at 27 million views. "A lot, buddy. A whole lot." "Do they know I have cancer?" "Some of them do." "Do they know I'm brave?" David's throat tightened. "Everyone knows you're brave, Malik." "Good, because Mama said being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing it anyway. And I was really scared on the plane, but I didn't give up." "You never gave up. Not once." Malik reached out his hand. David took it. The boy's grip was weak, but it was there, present, alive. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "The flight attendant lady, the nice one, the one who brought me the cold towel and helped Mama. Is she in trouble?" "No, son, she's not in trouble." "Good, because she was the only one who was nice to me. Everybody else pretended I wasn't there. But she saw me. She really saw me." David held his son's hand and made a silent promise. He would find a way to make sure Jessica Reed knew that an 8-year-old boy in a hospital bed was thinking about her kindness, while the rest of the world was thinking about their outrage. 7:01 a.m. Pacific, 10:01 a.m. Eastern. David stepped into the hallway to take a call from his board chair, William Chen. "David, the board is behind you, unanimously. We've reviewed your statement, the footage, and the actions taken. No objections." "Thank you, William. But I need to ask you something honestly. Are you okay? Not as a CEO, as a father." David leaned against the wall. "My son asked me this morning if people know he's brave. He's 8 years old, William. He's got cancer and a bruised spleen, and he's worried about whether strangers think he's brave." "What did you tell him?" "I told him everyone knows." "That kid is something special, David." "I know. That's why I'm going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Not on my airline. Not on any airline." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about a new protocol. Named after him. Something that changes how every airline in this country handles medical passengers, child passengers, and in-flight assault. I'm thinking about turning the worst night of my family's life into the thing that protects every other family. You've got the board's full support. Good, because I'm about to need it." David hung up. He looked through the glass window of Malik's room. Tanya was lying beside Malik on the bed now, her arm draped over him, both of them asleep. The monitors beeped steady. The IV dripped slow. The morning light filtered in and fell across them like something gentle that the world owed them after everything it had taken. David put his phone in his pocket. He wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand, and he walked back into that room and sat down beside his family. Because the war wasn't over. The public reckoning was just beginning. Lauren Whitmore's lawyers were maneuvering. The media was circling. And somewhere in Atlanta, a fired flight attendant was about to learn that the footage didn't lie and the internet doesn't forget. But right now, in this room, his son was alive and his wife was resting, and the machines were beeping, and the world could wait. Just for a few more minutes, the world could wait. The world didn't wait long. By noon Pacific time, the story of Flight 714 had become the most discussed event in America. Not politics, not sports, not celebrity gossip. An 8-year-old boy with cancer who got kicked on an airplane. That's what the country was talking about. 41 million views on the original 38-second clip. 14 million on the crew footage. Every cable news channel led with it. Every newspaper put it above the fold. And the name David Thompson was on the lips of every commentator, every anchor, every editorial board in the nation. 7:22 a.m. Pacific, Monday morning, Seattle Children's Hospital. Dr. Anita Patel walked into Malik's room with a tablet in her hand and a look on her face that Tanya had learned to read over 11 months of oncology appointments. It was the look doctors give when the news isn't terrible, but it isn't simple either. "How is he?" Tanya asked before Dr. Patel could speak. "The splenic contusion is stable, no expansion overnight. His vitals have been steady and his pain levels have come down significantly. We're going to keep him on observation for another 24 hours, but I'm cautiously optimistic that surgery won't be necessary." David leaned forward. "What about his leukemia treatment? Can he still see Dr. Morrison?" "That's what I want to talk to you about. I spoke with Dr. Morrison this morning. He's reviewed Malik's full history, his blood work from last night, and the imaging from the trauma assessment. He still wants to evaluate Malik personally this afternoon." "But," Dr. Patel hesitated, "the trauma has complicated things. Malik's platelet count dropped further overnight. That's not unusual after an impact like this, especially in a patient already immunocompromised. But it means the experimental treatment Dr. Morrison is considering may need to be delayed. His body needs to recover from the physical trauma before we can introduce a new protocol." Tanya's face collapsed. "How long of a delay?" 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4. We need his counts to stabilize first." "He doesn't have 4 weeks. You know that. Every week we wait, but cancer advances." "I know, and Dr. Morrison knows. That's why he's coming in personally today. He wants to assess whether there's a modified approach that could work within a narrower window." "This isn't a closed door, Mrs. Thompson. It's a detour. A detour caused by a woman who kicked my child." Dr. Patel didn't respond to that. She didn't need to. Everyone in that room understood exactly what had been stolen. David stood up. "What time is Dr. Morrison coming?" 2 p.m. "We'll be ready." Dr. Patel left. Tanya sat on the edge of the bed and took Malik's hand. He was awake, listening. He'd heard everything. "Mama, does that mean I can't get the medicine yet?" Tanya pressed her lips together. "It means the doctors want to make sure your body is strong enough first." "Because of what the lady did to me?" "Yes, baby." Malik was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's not fair." "No, it's not. I was already being brave. I was already fighting, and she made it harder." "You're still fighting. Nothing she did changes that." "But what if the cancer doesn't wait?" Tanya couldn't answer that. She pulled him close and held him and didn't let go until a nurse came in to check his vitals. David stepped into the hallway. He pulled out his phone. He had 47 missed calls, 12 from media outlets, 8 from board members, 6 from his legal team, 3 from numbers he didn't recognize, and 1 from a number saved in his contacts as Mom. He called her back first. David Marcus Thompson, why am I finding out about my grandson from CNN? Mama, I'm sorry. It happened fast. I've been at the hospital since 4 a.m. How's my baby? He's stable. Bruised spleen, but no rupture. They're watching him. And the woman? In federal custody. Good. I hope they throw the book at her. I hope they throw the whole library. Mama, don't mama me. Some woman put her hands on my grandbaby on an airplane while he's fighting for his life. David, you tell me right now, are you handling this? I'm handling it. You handling it as a CEO or as a father? Both. Make sure the father wins. The CEO has lawyers. That boy needs his daddy. I hear you, Mama. I'm flying out tonight. Don't argue with me. I wasn't going to. 8:44 a.m. Pacific, 11:44 a.m. Eastern. David's phone rang again. Sandra Reeves. David, Lauren Whitmore posted bail 30 minutes ago, $250,000. Her attorney held a press conference outside the courthouse. What did he say? He called it an unfortunate incident caused by extreme stress and sleep deprivation. He said his client deeply regrets the interaction and is seeking counseling. He characterized the charges as disproportionate and implied that your involvement as both the victim's father and the airline's CEO represents a conflict of interest. A conflict of interest? My son got kicked and I responded. That's not a conflict. That's a consequence. There's more. Carmichael is floating a narrative that Whitmore may have been provoked. He's suggesting that the cabin environment was hostile and that Tanya was aggressive toward his client before the incident. David's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles ached. Tanya was holding her dying son. She told that woman to sit down. That's provocation now? It's spin, David. It won't hold up. The footage is crystal clear, but they're going to try to muddy the water. Then we clear it. I want Jalen Carter's full 17-minute footage released. Not edited, not clipped. Every second from the moment Lauren first complained to the moment she was escorted off. Let the world see the full picture. Jalen's mother has already been in contact with our legal team. She's willing to release it with the family's consent. Get it done. Today. 9:12 a.m. Pacific. The full footage dropped at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 17 minutes and 22 seconds, unedited. It showed Lauren's first complaint. It showed Tanya calmly telling her that Malik was sick. It showed Lauren's second approach. It showed the kick. It showed the aftermath. It showed Greg Hollister offering Lauren water while Malik lay on the floor. It showed Doris Hale pushing past the crew. It showed Jessica Reed defying orders. It showed everything. By 10 a.m., the provocation narrative was dead. Carmichael's firm issued a revised statement removing any reference to hostile cabin environment. By 11 a.m., legal analysts on 3 networks were discussing the strength of the federal case. By noon, a former federal prosecutor said on national television that based on the footage alone, Lauren Whitmore was looking at a minimum of 3 to 5 years. 10:14 a.m. Pacific. David's phone buzzed with a message from an unexpected source. Mr. Thompson, this is Marcus Bell, the gentleman from row 4. I gave my statement to the police last night, but I wanted to reach out personally. My wife and I have been praying for Malik all morning. I also wanted you to know something. When that woman kicked your son, every instinct I had told me to get up. 22 years in the Army taught me to act, but I froze. I sat there and I froze. That's going to stay with me for a long time. Your boy deserved better from all of us that night. David typed back, Mr. Bill, you stayed on that plane until the police arrived. You gave your witness statement voluntarily. You didn't freeze. You held the line, and that matters more than you know. If there's anything I can do for your family, anything at all, you have my number. Thank you, Marcus. Truly. 12:08 p.m. Pacific. Tanya was sitting beside Malik when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered anyway. Mrs. Thompson? My name is Jessica Reed. I don't know if you remember me. Tanya's breath caught. I remember you. You're the flight attendant, the one who helped us. Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to call and check on Malik. I've been thinking about him all night. I couldn't sleep. He's doing better. He's stable. He asked about you this morning. He did? He told his father that you were the only one who saw him. Those were his words. She really saw me. Jessica was quiet on the other end. Then her voice came through, thick and unsteady. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd done more, if I'd been louder, if I'd stood up to Greg sooner. Maybe the captain would have diverted. Maybe Malik wouldn't be in the hospital right now. Jessica, listen to me. You were the only crew member on that plane who treated my son like a human being. You defied your supervisor. You documented everything. You called ahead for paramedics. My husband read your notes. He told me they were more detailed and more accurate than the official flight log. You didn't just help us. You gave us evidence. Mr. Thompson called me this morning. He told me about the reassignment to corporate safety. I don't even know how to process that. I thought I was going to be fired. You were the only one who deserved to keep their job. And now you're going to help make sure what happened to Malik never happens to another child. I'm going to try. Don't try, do it. My son is counting on you. Every mother who puts her sick kid on a plane is counting on you. 1:14 p.m. Pacific. David sat in the hospital cafeteria with a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. His phone lay face up on the table. The screen was a constant stream of notifications. He ignored them all, except one, a message from Jim. The FAA has opened a formal investigation into Flight 714. They're looking at the captain's refusal to divert, the crew's response time, and our existing medical emergency protocols. They want full cooperation. David typed back, "Give them everything. Every document, every recording, every internal memo. Full transparency. We have nothing to hide and everything to fix." Understood. One more thing. 6 other airlines have reached out in the last 2 hours. They want to know about the protocol changes you mentioned in your statement. They're asking if you'd be willing to share the framework. David set his coffee down. He read the message twice. 6 airlines. 6 competitors, asking to learn from his tragedy, asking to protect their passengers because of what happened to his son. Tell them yes. Tell them all yes. This isn't about competitive advantage. This is about children. 1:58 p.m. Pacific. Dr. James Morrison walked into Malik's room. He was tall, gray-haired, quiet in the way that brilliant people often are. He carried no tablet, no charts. He pulled a chair close to Malik's bed and sat down. "So you're Malik?" "Yes, sir. I hear you've had a rough couple of days. A lady kicked me on the airplane, and I have cancer." Dr. Morrison nodded slowly. "That's a lot for anyone to deal with, especially at the same time. How are you feeling right now?" "My stomach still hurts a little, but less than yesterday." "Good. That means your body is already healing." "Malik, I'm going to be honest with you because I think you're the kind of kid who can handle honesty. Is that okay?" Malik looked at his mother, then his father, then back at the doctor. "Yes, sir. The treatment I want to try for your cancer is something new. It's powerful and it's promising, but it's hard on the body. Your body right now is dealing with the injury from the airplane, so we need to wait a little while before we start. But I want you to know something. I flew across the country to see you. I don't do that for many patients. I did it because when I looked at your case, I saw a fighter, and fighters deserve the best chance." Malik's eyes were wide and serious. "How long do we have to wait?" "About 3 weeks, maybe a little less if your body heals fast." "Will the cancer wait?" Dr. Morrison leaned forward. "I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it does. We're going to start you on a bridge therapy this week that will hold the line while your body recovers. And then, when you're ready, we're going to hit this thing with everything we've got." "Am I going to be okay?" Dr. Morrison looked at David and Tanya. Then he looked back at Malik. "I'm going to fight for you, Malik. That's what I can promise. And from what I've seen, you're pretty good at fighting too." 2:27 p.m. Pacific. David stepped outside the hospital into the afternoon air. His phone rang, an unknown number. "Mr. Thompson, this is Doris Hale again. I'm sorry to bother you. I heard on the news about the woman's attorney trying to say she was provoked. I want you to know I'm willing to testify. I'm 71 years old. I was sitting 4 feet away. I saw everything. Nobody provoked that woman. She attacked a child. And if anyone tries to say otherwise in a courtroom, I'll be there to set the record straight. Mrs. Hale, you've already done more than anyone could ask. I haven't done enough. Not until that woman is held accountable. And not until every airline in this country treats a sick child like a priority instead of an inconvenience. That's exactly what I'm working on. I know you are. I've been watching you all day. You remind me of my late husband. He was a man who didn't make noise. He made change. There's a difference. Thank you, Doris. You take care of that boy, and you take care of his mother. She's the strongest woman I've ever seen, and I worked in an ER for 38 years. 3:06 p.m. Pacific. David sat in the hallway outside Malik's room and opened his laptop. Sandra had sent him a draft of what they were calling the Malik Protocol. He read it line by line. Any passenger with a disclosed medical condition receives priority boarding, priority seating, and a designated crew member assigned to their care for the duration of the flight. Any physical assault on a passenger triggers immediate restraint procedures and mandatory aircraft diversion to the nearest adequate facility. No crew member may prioritize passenger loyalty status over passenger safety under any circumstance. Violation results in immediate termination. All crew members must complete annual crisis intervention, medical emergency, and de-escalation training with practical scenario testing. Every aircraft must carry an enhanced medical kit that includes pediatric emergency supplies. A child traveling with a medical condition must be announced to the captain before departure. Their safety becomes a flight-level priority, equal to mechanical and weather concerns. David read it 3 times. Then he called Sandra. Add one more line. Go ahead. This protocol is named for Malik Thompson, age 8, who on the night of October 14th deserved the protection of every adult on Atlas National Flight 714 and received it from almost none of them. It exists so that no child on any flight ever experiences what he experienced. Not on our airline, not on any airline. I'll add it. And Sandra, make it permanent. Engrave it in the training manuals. Put it on the walls of every crew briefing room. I want every employee of this company to read that sentence on their first day and remember it on their last. 4:38 p.m. Pacific. Malik was sitting up in bed for the first time since the flight. Tanya had combed his hair, what little of it remained after chemotherapy. He was eating Jell-O and watching cartoons on a tablet David had brought from the hospital gift shop. He looked like a kid, just a kid. Not a victim, not a headline. Just a boy with Jell-O on his chin and cartoons on his screen. David's mother arrived at 4:45. She walked into that room like a force of nature, kissed Malik on both cheeks, squeezed Tanya until Tanya cried again, and then pulled David into the hallway. You did good, son. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. That's how you know you're doing it right. The people who think they've done enough are the ones who haven't done a damn thing. Mama, she delayed his treatment, the kick, the trauma. His platelet count dropped. Dr. Morrison has to wait 3 weeks before he can start the experimental protocol. 3 weeks we might not have. His mother took his face in her hands, the same hands that had held him when he was Malik's age, the same hands that had worked 2 jobs to put him through school, the same hands that had clapped the loudest at his college graduation, his MBA ceremony, his first press conference as CEO. You listen to me, David Marcus Thompson. That boy in there is a fighter. He comes from fighters. His grandmother scrubbed floors to build a life. His father built an empire from nothing. His mother hasn't slept in 4 days, and she's still standing. That cancer picked the wrong family. And that woman on the airplane picked the wrong child. 3 weeks is not a death sentence. 3 weeks is a countdown. And when that countdown hits 0, Malik is going to walk into that treatment, and he's going to fight like every Thompson before him.